A racist professor laughs at a young black woman, failing her for plagiarism on a thesis he deems too brilliant for her to have written. But that professor, a man cocooned in tenure and prejudice, just made the biggest mistake of his long, storied career. This is the story of how one man's arrogance led to his complete and total destruction. Professor Alastair Finch sits enthroned in his office. It is less an office and more a shrine to himself. The walls are dark mahogany, groaning under the weight of leather-bound books that he has likely never read but which look suitably impressive. A faint scent of old paper and pipe tobacco clings to the air, a perfume of manufactured intellect. His desk is a vast, polished battlefield of oak where he has executed the careers of countless students. He is a man carved from granite and prejudice. His white hair is a perfect, sculpted helmet. His eyes, pale and cold, scan the document before him not for comprehension, but for weakness. He holds Imani Carter's doctoral thesis in his liver-spotted hands, and the corners of his thin mouth curl downward in a familiar sneer of contempt. The document is titled, Temporal Lensing and the Echoes of Pre-Big Bang Structures. It is dense, formidable, and, to his profound irritation, utterly brilliant. He knows, with the instinct of a predator, that the work is beyond him. He has not had an original thought in 2 decades. His own contributions to astrophysics are footnotes in forgotten journals, small, bitter monuments to a mind that peaked early and then fossilized. This thesis, this thing, hums with an energy he has never possessed. It is audacious. It is revolutionary. And it was submitted by a black girl from a part of the city he only ever drives through with his doors locked. The dissonance is a physical irritant, a piece of grit in the otherwise smooth-running machine of his worldview. It cannot be. Therefore, it is not. He presses a button on the antique intercom on his desk. His voice is a low rumble, the sound of rocks grinding together. Send in Miss Carter. Outside, in the hallowed, silent hallway, Imani Carter flinches. She sits on a hard wooden bench, one that feels like it was designed by the Inquisition. She has been waiting for 47 minutes. She knows because she has counted every tick of the grandfather clock that stands like a grim sentinel at the end of the hall. Imani is a universe of anxiety contained in a small frame. She wears a simple gray dress, the best thing she owns, ironed to a crisp perfection. Her hands are clasped so tightly in her lap that her knuckles are white stars against her dark skin. Her backpack, heavy with notebooks filled with 5 years of relentless work, sits at her feet like a loyal, tired dog. The university is a kingdom, and she is a commoner granted a temporary visa. Its Gothic towers pierce the sky like accusations. Its stone halls echo with the ghosts of men who looked just like Professor Finch. She has walked these halls for years, always feeling like an imposter, a ghost haunting a place she doesn't belong. Her thesis is her claim to citizenship. It is everything. It is the culmination of sleepless nights fueled by cheap coffee and a burning, desperate need to understand the cosmos. It is the fulfillment of a promise made to her father, a man with calloused hands and a poet's heart, who would take her onto the roof of their apartment building and teach her the constellations. He was a janitor who dreamed of the stars for his daughter. He died a year before she solved the final equation. She stands up, her legs unsteady. She smooths her dress, takes a deep breath that does nothing to calm the frantic hummingbird in her chest, and walks toward the great oak door. The nameplate gleams under the dim light, Professor Alastair Finch, Ph.D. Head of the Department of Theoretical Astrophysics. The door feels as heavy as a tombstone. She enters. The room swallows her. Finch does not look up. He continues to make a small, dismissive notation in the margin of her thesis with a red fountain pen. The scratch of the nib on the paper is the only sound. It sounds like an insect dying. He does not invite her to sit. Imani stands before the desk, a small, dark planet in the orbit of a dying, bloated sun. Finally, he lays the pen down with theatrical precision. He raises his cold eyes to meet hers. There is no warmth in them, no academic curiosity. There is only a weary, profound disappointment, as if she has personally wasted his valuable time simply by existing. Miss Carter, he begins, his voice slathered in condescension. He picks up her thesis, holding it between his thumb and forefinger as if it were a soiled handkerchief. This, he says, letting the word hang in the air, heavy with judgment, is an insult. He drops it. The 150 pages of her life's work slap against the polished wood of the desk. The sound is shockingly loud in the silent room. Imani's mouth goes dry. Professor? I don't understand. Oh, I think you do, he says, leaning back in his throne-like leather chair. The chair groans in protest. This is a work of fiction. A fantasy. And worse, it is a plagiarized fantasy. The word hits her like a physical blow. Plagiarized. The cardinal sin of academia. An accusation that is a death sentence. No, she whispers, her voice barely audible. No, every word, every equation, it's all mine. I have the notes. I have the data logs from the observatory. 5 years of. He raises a hand, a dismissive, regal gesture that silences her instantly. Please, he sighs, a sound of profound boredom. Do not compound your dishonesty with these pathetic theatrics. I have been at this institution for 40 years. I have mentored minds that have gone on to win the highest honors in our field. I know what genius looks like, Miss Carter. I know what hard work looks like. And I know what a desperate, overambitious student trying to cheat her way to a degree looks like. He gestures to the thesis. This is elegant. It is complex. It posits a theory that is, frankly, beyond the grasp of most seasoned professionals. He pauses, letting the silence stretch. He looks her up and down, a slow, deliberate appraisal that strips her of her intellect, her dignity, her humanity. Work of this caliber, he says, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, is simply not possible. Not for you. He doesn't have to say the rest. He doesn't have to say, someone of your background, or, a girl like you. The words hang in the air between them, invisible but as solid and sharp as shards of glass. Imani feels the blood drain from her face. The injustice is so blatant, so naked, it steals her breath. It's not about evidence. It's not about academic rigor. It's about him, his world, and her inability to exist within it as anything other than what he has already decided she is. Professor Finch, she says, her voice trembling but gaining a sliver of strength. With all due respect, you are mistaken. This is my work. I can walk you through every single proof, every line of code for the simulations. Enough, he barks. The sound jolts her. He stands, a looming figure of tweed and entitlement. I will not have my intelligence insulted. You have been caught, Miss Carter. The only question that remains is how we proceed. He sees the fight in her eyes, the refusal to crumble, and it infuriates him. He doubles down, eager to crush this last flicker of defiance. I am failing this thesis, he declares. And I am recommending your immediate expulsion to the Academic Review Board for gross academic misconduct. The room begins to tilt. The books on the shelves seem to blur. Expulsion. Blacklisted. The end of everything. You can't, she stammers. There's no proof. You have no proof. A slow, cruel smile spreads across his face. It is a terrifying sight. Miss Carter, he says softly, savoring his power. In this office, in this department, I am the proof. Imani tries to rally. She opens her mouth to argue, to plead, to show him the reams of data, the years of meticulous, back-breaking labor she has brought with her. He presses the intercom button again. Dr. Evans, could you join us please? A moment later, the door opens and a harried-looking woman in her late 40s enters. Dr. Evans is the department head on paper, but everyone knows she serves at the pleasure of King Alistair. She is a woman who has traded her spine for a parking space closer to the building. She sees Imani's face, pale and stricken. She sees the thesis on the desk. She sees the predatory glint in Finch's eyes. She knows exactly what is happening. She has seen it before. Alistair, she begins, her voice weak. What seems to be the problem? The problem, Eleanor, Finch says, his tone dripping with false camaraderie, is that Miss Carter has submitted a work of profound academic dishonesty. I've caught her red-handed. Dr. Evans looks at Imani, a flicker of sympathy in her eyes, quickly extinguished by fear. Imani. Is this true? No. Imani says, her voice cracking. He won't even look at my research notes. He just decided. He just. She is hysterical, Finch cuts in smoothly. A common reaction when one's deceptions are brought into the light. Dr. Evans wrings her hands. She is a portrait of institutional cowardice. Alastair, perhaps we should form a small committee to review the evidence. A neutral third party. Finch laughs. It is a dry, rattling sound. A committee? To review my judgment. Eleanor, I have forgotten more about astrophysics than you and your committees will ever know. My word is final. The girl is a cheat. He turns his cold gaze back to Imani. His victory over Dr. Evans has emboldened him. It is time to lay out the terms of her surrender. However, he says, a benevolent tyrant offering a pittance of mercy. I am feeling generous. There is another path for you. A way to avoid utter ruin. He leans forward, his hands flat on the desk. He is a judge pronouncing sentence. You will withdraw this fraudulent document, he says, flicking a finger at her thesis. You will write a formal letter of apology to me and to the department for your lapse in judgment. Then, I will assign you a new, more appropriate topic. Something you can realistically handle. Perhaps a literature review on the moons of Jupiter. Simple. Straightforward. If you complete it to my satisfaction, you may graduate. Without honors, of course. The sheer arrogance of it is breathtaking. He is offering to let her stay in the world he controls, but only as a diminished, broken version of herself. And if I don't? Imani asks, her voice quiet but hard. If you don't, Finch says, his smile returning, I will ensure that not only are you expelled from this university, but your name will be forwarded to every reputable graduate program in North America. You will be blacklisted. You will never work in this field. You will never so much as calibrate a telescope at a community college. I will erase you. The threat is total. It is absolute. He has the power to do it, and they both know it. Dr. Evans looks like she is about to be sick. Alastair, that's too harsh. The harshness of the punishment, Finch intones, as if quoting scripture, must match the severity of the crime. Imani feels a strange calm settle over her. It is the calm of the abyss. She is at the bottom, and there is nowhere left to fall. The fear is still there, a cold knot in her stomach, but something else is rising to meet it. A slow, burning rage. She thinks of her father. She thinks of him coming home from his second job, smelling of disinfectant and exhaustion, his back aching. She remembers him sitting with her at their small kitchen table, patiently explaining the math problems she couldn't understand, his big, rough finger tracing the numbers in her textbook. He believed in her with a faith that was as vast and unconditional as the night sky he taught her to love. My father, she says, her voice catching, he was a janitor. He worked his whole life so I could be here. This research, it was inspired by him. By the questions he used to ask. She hopes, foolishly, that a mention of her humble origins, of her dead father, might spark a flicker of humanity in him. She is wrong. Professor Finch lets out a short, sharp bark of a laugh. It is the cruelest sound she has ever heard. A janitor's daughter, he muses, shaking his head in mock wonder. A janitor's daughter playing at astrophysics. How utterly quaint. He leans in, his voice dropping to a venomous whisper. Let me give you some advice, Miss Carter. Ambition should be tempered by a realistic understanding of one's station. Perhaps you are better suited to his line of work. This university always needs good, reliable cleaning staff. That is it. That is the line. The moment the world fractures. The fear in Imani's chest does not vanish. It crystallizes. It transforms from a debilitating fog into a shard of ice, cold and sharp and perfectly clear. The hummingbird in her ribs dies, and in its place, a diamond begins to form under the immense pressure. She looks at Professor Alastair Finch, truly looks at him, and she no longer sees a formidable academic titan. She sees a small, pathetic man. A dinosaur staring up at the sky, oblivious to the asteroid hurtling toward him. She does not say a word. She simply gives a single, almost imperceptible nod. She turns, walks out of the office, and closes the heavy oak door gently behind her, leaving Finch and his cowering subordinate to savor what they believe is their absolute victory. Finch is triumphant. He has put another upstart in her place, reinforced the natural order of things. He feels the familiar, pleasant warmth of his own superiority settling back around him like a comfortable old coat. He has no idea that he has just signed his own death warrant. The academic review board is Finch's personal theater. He convenes it 3 days later in the faculty boardroom, a chamber even more imposing than his office. A colossal mahogany table, polished to a mirror shine, dominates the space. Portraits of stern-faced, dead white men, the university's founding fathers, stare down from the walls, a jury of ghosts. Finch has arranged this spectacle for maximum humiliation. He has invited not just the required board members, but also several of his tenured cronies and a few junior faculty members he enjoys intimidating. Dr. Evans is there, looking pale and clutching a folder as if it were a life raft. Imani sits alone at the far end of the table. She is the accused, the sacrificial lamb. She has not brought a lawyer. She has not brought a faculty advocate. She has brought only her backpack, which sits on the empty chair beside her. She is calm. Her stillness is unnerving. Finch paces at the head of the table, playing the role of the Grand Inquisitor. "We are here today," he begins, his voice resonating with false solemnity, "to address a most grave and distasteful matter. A matter of academic integrity. A concept that is the very bedrock of this esteemed institution." He gestures toward Imani without looking at her. "Miss Imani Carter, a doctoral candidate under my supervision, has seen fit to submit a final thesis that is, to put it bluntly, a work of audacious fraud. A product of plagiarism so profound, so comprehensive, that it represents an attack on the very principles of scholarly pursuit." He lets his words sink in. He sees the nods of his allies, the nervous glances of the others. He is in complete control. "I have given Miss Carter every opportunity," he lies smoothly, "to confess her transgression, to retract this fantasy, and to accept a more manageable path forward. A path of contrition and rehabilitation. She has refused." He stops his pacing and fixes his gaze on her. "And so, with a heavy heart, I am left with no choice but to recommend her immediate and permanent expulsion from this university." A murmur goes through the room. It is a harsh sentence, but no one dares to challenge him. He is Finch. His power is absolute. "Are there any questions before we vote on the matter?" he asks, the question a mere formality. The room is silent. The trap is set. The axe is about to fall. And then, a sound. A sound that does not belong. 2 heavy knocks on the grand oak doors of the boardroom. Sharp. Authoritative. Everyone turns. Finch frowns, annoyed by the interruption. "We are in a closed hearing. Please come back later." The door swings open anyway. Standing in the doorway is a man who seems to have stepped out of another era. He is elderly, with a shock of untamed white hair and eyes that burn with a fierce, undimmed intelligence. He wears a rumpled tweed jacket over a simple sweater, but he carries himself with an authority that makes every tenured professor in the room look like a graduate student. Behind him stand 2 people in sharp, dark suits, a man and a woman. They do not look like academics. They look like lawyers. Very expensive ones. Finch's irritation turns to confusion. "Who are you?" "This is a private meeting." The old man ignores him completely. His eyes scan the room and land on Imani. A brief, almost imperceptible smile touches his lips. Then his gaze sweeps over the assembled faculty, finally settling on the dean of the university, who is sitting at Finch's right hand. "Dean Albright," the man says, his voice a gravelly baritone that commands instant attention. "My apologies for the intrusion. My name is Eris Thorne. We spoke on the phone." A ripple of shock goes through the room. Eris Thorne. The Eris Thorne. The Nobel laureate. The father of modern cosmology. The living legend from Harvard whose work formed the very foundation of their field. It is like a god has descended from Olympus to attend a PTA meeting. Dean Albright, a man who normally exudes the unflappable calm of a seasoned bureaucrat, pales. He stands up so quickly his chair nearly topples over. "Dr. Thorne. My goodness. I wasn't expecting you in person. I thought the matter was too important for a phone call," Thorne says, his eyes cutting to Finch. For the first time, he addresses him directly. "And this is not a private meeting. Not anymore." Finch is stunned into silence. His face, moments ago flushed with power, is now a mask of disbelief. Eris Thorne is here. In his boardroom. Uninvited. I don't understand, Finch stammers, his authority bleeding away with every word. What is the meaning of this? I am here, Thorne says, stepping fully into the room, his lawyers following like silent shadows, to discuss the Carter thesis. The words hang in the air, electric. The power dynamic in the room does not just shift. It shatters. It inverts. The entire gravitational field of the university has just reoriented itself around the small, quiet woman at the end of the table. Finch looks from Thorne to Imani and back again. A dawning, sickening horror begins to creep into his eyes. He has miscalculated. He has miscalculated horribly. The Carter thesis, Finch sputters, trying to regain control, is a fraudulent document. It is plagiarized. I have irrefutable proof. Thorne raises a skeptical eyebrow. Do you? Irrefutable. That's a high bar, Alistair. I would be fascinated to see it. Because I, on the other hand, he says, as one of his lawyers steps forward and places a thick leather-bound folio on the table, have irrefutable proof to the contrary. He opens the folio. 6 months ago, Thorne begins, his voice filling the cavernous room, I received a submission to the Astrophysical Journal Review, for which I serve as a senior editor. It was a blind submission, no name attached, just a candidate number. It was a preliminary draft of a paper so audacious, so brilliantly conceived, that I initially suspected it was a prank by one of my colleagues at MIT. He looks directly at Imani. It was the foundational theory of what would become the Carter thesis. He turns a page in the folio. I did not just read it, gentlemen, madam. I studied it. I ran my own simulations based on its core axioms. The math was pristine. The logic, impeccable. It proposed a method for detecting the residual gravitational echoes of cosmic structures that may have existed before the Big Bang, using subtle anomalies in the lensing of light from distant quasars. It was, without exaggeration, the most exciting original work I have seen in 30 years. He pauses, letting the weight of his words settle on the stunned faculty. This is not the work of a student, Thorne continues, his voice ringing with conviction. This is the work of a genius. Finch is speechless. His mouth opens and closes, but no sound comes out. His entire reality is being dismantled, piece by piece, by the most respected men in his field. Thorne isn't finished. He systematically, methodically, deconstructs Finch's entire premise. He produces Imani's raw data logs from the Atacama Observatory, time-stamped and authenticated. He shows her correspondence with Dr. Lena Petrova in Germany, another giant in the field, discussing minute aspects of the theoretical framework. He projects her simulation code onto a screen, a beautiful, complex architecture of logic that could only have been written by its creator. He presents a mountain of evidence so high and so solid that Finch's accusation of plagiarism now looks not just wrong, but insane. The charge of plagiarism implies the existence of a source, Thorne says, his voice turning cold. So, I ask you, Professor Finch. Where is it? From whom could she possibly have stolen this? This work is so original, it has no precedent. She did not steal from the past. She has, in fact, written the future. Finch, desperate, flailing, finally finds his voice. This is a trick. She must have had help. A collaborator she is not crediting. A fair point, Thorne concedes, his eyes glinting. An accusation of uncredited collaboration is serious. Which is why I took the liberty of investigating that as well. The second lawyer steps forward and distributes a set of thin folders to the dean and the other board members. My office, Thorne says, gesturing to the lawyers, contacted several of your former doctoral students, Alistair. Specifically, female students and students of color from the past decade. An interesting pattern emerged. He nods to the dean. If you would open the folders, you will find sworn affidavits. One from a Dr. Ramirez, now at Caltech. She alleges that her thesis on dark matter filaments was suppressed by Professor Finch for 2 years, only to have a strikingly similar paper published under his name alone. She was told her work was unoriginal and threatened with failure if she protested. A gasp goes through the room. Dr. Evans looks as though she might faint. There is another, Thorne continues relentlessly, from a Dr. Chen in Beijing. She claims Professor Finch demanded he be listed as primary author on her breakthrough paper on neutron star composition, despite contributing nothing but a few grammatical corrections. When she refused, he tried to sabotage her postdoctoral fellowship application. One by one, the stories are laid bare. A litany of abuses. A pattern of intellectual theft, of bullying, of gatekeeping, aimed squarely at anyone who wasn't a white man in his own mold. Suddenly, a small, timid voice speaks up from the end of the table. It's a junior professor named Hines, a man Finch has terrorized for years. It's true, Hines says, his voice shaking but clear. I was there when he told Ramirez her work was a dead end. I knew it wasn't. I didn't say anything. I was afraid. The dam has broken. The betrayal is complete. Finch's kingdom is not just crumbling, it is being washed away in a flood of his own sins. He shatters. The carefully constructed facade of the elder statesman of science cracks and falls away, revealing the sputtering, terrified bigot underneath. Lies. All of it, he shrieks, his face purple with rage. This is a conspiracy. A witch hunt. This affirmative action hire, he points a trembling finger at Imani, comes in here with her stolen ideas, and you all fall over yourselves to praise her because you are terrified of being called racists. He turns on Thorne. And you. You're a relic. You want to attach your name to her work to seem relevant again. You're trying to steal my student. The irony is so thick it is almost comical. He has become a caricature of his own venomous paranoia. His booming voice is now a pathetic, cracking screech. Every word he speaks is another shovelful of dirt on his own grave. Dean Albright looks on, his face a mask of cold fury. The reputation of his university is being immolated before his very eyes. Professor Finch, the dean says, his voice dangerously quiet. That is enough. But Thorne has one last piece of evidence. The final nail. Actually, Dean, I believe the professor should be allowed to speak his mind, Thorne says calmly. He has been so candid with me in the past. He nods to his lawyer, who taps a key on a laptop. A digital audio file is projected onto the screen. I took the liberty of calling Professor Finch last week, Thorne explains to the room. I used a false name, of course. I told him I was representing a fictional foundation looking to fund promising young astrophysicists. I asked him about his promising student, Imani Carter. He presses play. Finch's voice, confident and condescending, fills the silent room. Ah yes, Miss Carter. A very earnest girl. Enthusiastic. But she is struggling, I'm afraid. Barely competent in the fundamentals. She requires a great deal of hands-on guidance. The voice of Thorne, disguised, asks, but her thesis? I heard it was quite revolutionary. A dismissive chuckle from the recording of Finch. Oh, that. Well, between you and me, the core concepts are largely my own work. My little side project. I'm letting her develop it as a learning exercise. I have to guide her through every single step. Poor girl is simply out of her depth. The recording ends. Silence. It is a profound, damning silence. The sound of a career ending. The sound of a man being utterly, completely, and irrevocably exposed. He has not only lied. He has not only tried to steal her work. He has been caught, on tape, confessing to the entire sordid affair. Dean Albright slowly stands up. His face is like stone. He looks at Finch with a level of contempt that could wither trees. Alastair, he says, his voice devoid of all warmth. You are a disgrace to this university. You are a disgrace to your field. You are suspended, effective immediately. Your tenure is under formal review for revocation. Security will escort you from this campus. As if on cue, the boardroom doors open again. 2 uniformed campus security officers step inside. They are large men. They do not look happy. They walk over and stand on either side of the sputtering, shell-shocked Professor Finch. His kingdom has fallen. His throne has been kicked out from under him. He is no longer a king. He is just a criminal in a bad suit. They take his arms. He looks around the room, at the faces of his former colleagues, and sees no sympathy. He sees only disgust and relief. His reign of terror is over. As they lead him toward the door, his eyes lock with Imani's. His face is a contorted mask of pure, undiluted hatred. "You," he seethes, his voice a venomous rasp. "You will regret this." And now, after hours of silence, Imani speaks. Her voice is not loud, but it is perfectly clear. It cuts through the tension in the room like a laser. It carries to every corner, to every person. "No, Professor," she says, her gaze unwavering. "You will." She stands up, small and straight and utterly triumphant. "I needed you to do this. I needed you to put your prejudice on public display. I needed the world to see how you treat people when you think no one is watching. When you think they are powerless." She takes a step toward him. "You didn't see a scientist. You saw a black woman. And you assumed I was nothing. Your prejudice didn't just blind you, Professor Finch." She delivers the final line with the calm, devastating precision of a surgeon. "It buried you." The security guards pull him out of the room. The last thing anyone sees is his face, slack with the dawning, horrifying realization that she is right. He is finished. Utterly and completely. The door clicks shut behind him. The fallout is swift. It is brutal. It is a cleansing fire. Professor Alastair Finch's ruin is absolute, a textbook case of karmic annihilation. The university's review board revokes his tenure in a record-setting emergency session. He is fired for cause, his contract terminated under the morals clause he himself had championed years ago to oust a rival. His pension is seized to help pay for the legal storm that is about to break over the university. The affidavits collected by Dr. Thorne's lawyers become the basis for a class-action lawsuit. More than a dozen former students, emboldened by his public downfall, come forward with their own stories of abuse, intellectual theft, and career sabotage. The university, desperate to avoid a protracted and embarrassing public trial, settles for a staggering sum. Finch is forced to sell his grand house, his collection of rare books, his antique furniture, all the trappings of his fraudulent intellectual superiority, to cover his share of the damages. He is left with nothing. He is academically blacklisted. His name is scrubbed from university websites. His few remaining allies abandon him, scurrying away like rats from a sinking ship. His name becomes a verb in academic circles. To pull a Finch is to be destroyed by one's own bigotry. He tries to find work at smaller, less reputable colleges, but his disgrace is too public, too profound. The last anyone hears, he is living in a small, sad apartment, a bitter, forgotten old man railing against a world that he believes has wronged him. The accomplices do not escape judgment. Dr. Evans, for her spineless complicity, is removed as department head and demoted to a non-tenured teaching position with the least desirable class schedules. She is a ghost in the halls she once aspired to rule, a permanent reminder of the cost of cowardice. The other cronies on the board who blindly supported Finch are censured and stripped of their committee assignments. The department is gutted and rebuilt from the ground up. For the heroes, the rewards are as bountiful as the punishments for the villains were severe. Imani Carter is, of course, the center of it all. Her thesis is accepted and graded with the highest possible honors by an external committee headed by Dr. Thorne himself. The paper is fast-tracked for publication in the most prestigious journal in the world, where it lands with the force of a meteor strike, reshaping the entire field of cosmology. She doesn't stay at the university that nearly destroyed her. Dean Albright, in a desperate act of damage control, offers her a full professorship, a lab, anything she wants. She politely declines. Instead, she accepts a full, unconditional fellowship to Harvard, to complete her postdoctoral work directly under the mentorship of Eris Thorne. They become a legendary duo, the old lion and the young genius, pushing the boundaries of human knowledge. She is awarded the prestigious MacArthur Genius Grant, and uses the money to establish her own research initiative. Her former university, shamed into action, establishes the Dr. Imani Carter Scholarship, a multi-million-dollar fund dedicated to supporting underrepresented students in the STEM fields. It is their penance. The other victims of Finch's reign find their own forms of justice. Dr. Ramirez's stolen research is publicly reattributed to her, and she receives a formal apology and a substantial financial settlement from the university. Dr. Chen is invited to be a keynote speaker at a major conference, her work finally receiving the recognition it deserves. The lawsuit brings them not just money, but vindication. Their truth is finally heard. The system, shocked into awareness, begins to change. The university implements sweeping new policies to protect students from the whims of powerful, tenured tyrants. An independent ombudsman's office is created, giving students a safe and powerful avenue to report abuse without fear of retaliation. The Finch scandal becomes a case study taught in academic ethics courses across the country. 2 years later, the Charles River is a ribbon of glittering blue outside the window. The office is modern, clean, filled with light. White boards cover the walls, but they are not filled with the dry, dusty equations of a bygone era. They are alive, a chaotic, beautiful storm of new ideas, complex diagrams, and speculative mathematics. Dr. Imani Carter stands in the center of the room. She is no longer the timid, anxious girl who sat on a hard bench outside a tyrant's door. That girl is a distant constellation, a part of her history but no longer her present. This woman is a leader. She wears a simple black turtleneck and jeans, a uniform of quiet confidence. Her hair is styled in intricate braids that shimmer with threads of silver. She exudes an aura of calm, focused authority. This is her lab. The Carter Institute for Cosmological Research at Harvard University. She is mentoring a group of graduate students. They are a vibrant, diverse collection of minds from all over the world. A young woman in a hijab is passionately arguing a point about quantum entanglement with a young man from Brazil. A student from Wyoming, the first in his family to attend college, is sketching out a star chart on a tablet. They are brilliant, they are eager, and they look at Imani with a mixture of awe and deep affection. She guides them, challenges them, but most importantly, she protects them. She has built a sanctuary of science, a place where the only thing that matters is the quality of the work and the fire of curiosity. A place where no one will ever be judged by their background, their gender, or the color of their skin. Later that evening, the lab is quiet. Her team has gone home. Imani stands alone by the large window, looking out not at the city, but up, at the darkening sky where the first stars are beginning to appear. Venus hangs like a lonely diamond in the twilight. She thinks of her father, of his rough hands pointing out Orion's belt, of the wonder in his voice as he tried to explain infinity to a 5-year-old girl on a tenement rooftop. He couldn't have imagined this. A daughter with her name on a building at Harvard. A daughter who was redrawing the map of the universe he so loved. But he knew. He knew the fire that was in her. He had protected that flame, nurtured it, and believed in it, even when the rest of the world tried to snuff it out. The moral of the story is not simply that good triumphs over evil. It is that arrogance is a prison. Prejudice is a blindness. Professor Finch built his world out of those materials, a fortress of his own ego, and in the end, he became its only prisoner. He could not see the stars standing right in front of him because he was too busy looking down his nose. True genius, true strength, like the light from the oldest stars, travels a very long way. It can be bent, it can be obscured, but it cannot be extinguished. It will always, eventually, reach its destination and set the darkness ablaze. And in that light, the petty tyrants of the world are revealed for what they truly are, small, insignificant shadows, destined to be forgotten. Imani Carter, the janitor's daughter, has the cosmos in her eyes. And she is just getting started.